Nvidia's CEO Jensen has said he not only wants to lead Nvidia for another 3 to 4 decades, he then wants to continue as a robot for another 3 to 4 decades after that. Yes, that is what he said. So in an interview shortly before his keynote at GDC today, he is quoted as saying, "Well, as long as you can tell I'm spritey and quite enthusiastic and energetic yet. I'm surrounded by amazing people who keep me inspired, and I feel we can do great things together, and they give me so much confidence in what we can do and the impact we can make. I think I'm making a real contribution to the company to make an environment where we can make really amazing contributions. So I think for as long as I believe I can do that, I don't know exactly for how long that's going to be, but 3 to 4 decades, I'd say." So keeping in mind his current age, that could put him planning to be the CEO of Nvidia into his 90s. But then the more interesting bit, another 4 decades, I'd be robotic, and maybe another 3 to 4 decades after that. So yes, he's thinking, go into his 90s. By then, he can probably have a robot version of himself to continue being the CEO of Nvidia for another 3 to 4 decades after that point. Hopefully, I get to enjoy this for a very long time. Now, I, for one, hail our new robot overlord, Jensen. Now, as far as what we expect to come from the, announcement at GDC, I shoot these videos in the morning before I leave for work. So I haven't watched the full keynote yet. We had originally hoped to see some information about RTX 4070, but lately the rumors have pointed to that not getting revealed until a day before it launches. So we'll hear about it April 12th and get it April 13th if the current rumors serve to be true. However, we did see a release of some information about Nvidia Path Tracing SDK, which is probably going to be one of the main talking points we'll see here. And I'll make a new video if there's big news after this point. If it's huge news, later today. If it's a little less urgent, tomorrow morning. If anything big comes out of the GDC keynote. Now, integration of real-time path tracing technology simplified. So we're seeing this as probably one of the big things coming at GDC. This is on the Nvidia blog posted already. The big thing here is Nvidia RTX Path Tracing SDK being available for developers. Now, I didn't see anything about a plug-in directly into Unreal Engine or Unity yet, anything like that. Also note that path tracing is basically a really advanced and difficult to compute version of ray tracing. And we already know that ray tracing is incredibly difficult to run. So you might be wondering, are we really ready for path tracing yet? Well, we've seen it in things like Portal RTX, and we had the Quake RTX demo, but those have very simplified geometry and scenes compared to a modern AAA game. So it is interesting to note that they're suggesting that this technology could be suitable for the following use cases for developers. It mentions building a reference path tracer to ensure that your lighting during production is true to life, accelerating the iteration process. So not necessarily being used in the actual implemented game for the end user, but more actually being used by the developer to kind of check what the lighting should look like using path tracing in real time quickly, and then still developing their own non-path trace lighting for the game. But this was interesting, building a high-quality photo mode for RT-capable GPUs or real-time ultra-quality modes that take advantage of the Ada Lovelace architecture. So 2 things there. So we're seeing maybe for GPUs that can't really handle path tracing, you could still have a photo mode that goes into a path tracing mode. It doesn't run very well, but if you're just taking photos, those photos will look really great. Bringing a new version of the, a lot of people say, ultra settings is for screenshots, high settings is for actually playing the game. Well, how about path tracing is for screenshots, and not path tracing is for playing the game? Although it does say in ultra quality modes that take advantage of the Ada Lovelace architecture. So it's possible that, they are talking about you could have a path traced actual gameplay mode, but they're suggesting just Ada Lovelace architecture there, which is the 40 series, which again would also have frame generation possibly being used to get any sort of a realistic frame rate there. They go into a little bit of detail here on what this kind of pipeline would look like. All that kind of stuff, and then talk, a little bit more, mentioning the, Cyberpunk getting path tracing with RT overdrive mode, that kind of stuff. Anyway, let's move on to, again, more about the RTX 4070. So we've heard the rumors pointing to it being a 12 gigabytes of memory, And we've also seen rumors of the RTX 4060 being 8 gigabytes of memory, and a lot of people feeling very disappointed by the 4060 still only having 8 gigabytes of memory. Now, this one is still not official from Nvidia, but this is coming from Gigabyte. Now, how are we getting this information from Gigabyte? I'm seeing a report at videocards.com, and again, all my sources will be in the description to the video. But apparently what they've done is they've added some information to their Gigabyte Control Center software. So that's where you could control, the lighting and things, overclocking, things like that, through Gigabyte's own software. But in the latest version of it, there are these listings, GVN4070, in other words, an Nvidia 4070 Aero OC. In other words, it's their product codes for some of their upcoming GPUs, but the way Gigabyte does their product codes, it's very easy to tell exactly what it says, right? So if you decode these codes, what it basically says is Gigabyte RTX 4070 Aero OC version, 12 gigabytes. And Gigabyte RTX 4060 Gaming OC, 8 gigabyte. So that is right there, straight from Gigabyte in their own control center, confirming at least those memory configurations. Although whether or not the rest of the specs end up being confirmed, we have yet to see, but I've done a lot of other videos already talking about this. Now, the biggest thing on the 4070 is the pricing. Because with the rumors of a $750 price point, it would just be dead, because you can buy a 4070 Ti at about $800 MSRP already, so that would be silly, especially if it's as cut down as this rumor seems to suggest. So hopefully that $750 number being thrown around was maybe misunderstood, and that's the upper ceiling of how high the prices should go, like they should not exceed $750, and there'll hopefully be some more reasonable models. But given how Nvidia has priced GPUs lately, I would not put anything past them. Maybe let's just have a $3,000 MSRP and see if anyone buys it. Anyway. However, here's some more interesting information. So far, Nvidia's 4000 series GPUs have all, even the board partner card versions, featured the 12 VHP power connector. Recently, featured in some controversies regarding it melting due to not being plugged in correctly. Anyway, so there's some photos of the Inno3D RTX 4070 box that show an 8-pin power connector. So that is very interesting. So it's looking like we could actually have normal 8-pin power connectors on at least some of the RTX 4070 and lower models from Nvidia. So that would be very interesting. And I'm hoping that is true, because I think for some people it's going to be a lot more convenient to swap this in and out of your case, and due to space, just not having those extra little dongle things. Now, I looked a little bit more into this, and Igor's lab had a report actually a little bit before this came out, talking about this. So Igor's lab said, back to roots, depending on the TDP, board partner cards of the GeForce RTX 4070, 4060 Ti, and 4060 may come out without the 12VH power connector, which is good, I think. Now, he says, according to his information from manufacturers, so he has some sources within the manufacturing chains, he says there will be 2 TBP classes, so total board power classes, for the upcoming RTX 4070 non-Ti, which again is supposed to launch in April. The more expensive models, or OC cards, will have a TBP of 225 watts, and he thinks those ones, in other words, the factory overclocked cards, will still use the 12 VHP connector, or alternatively up to a 2x8 pin connector. So it could be a couple of options there on those. But the models with a TBP of 200 watts, so the ones that should be closer to MSRP and not factory overclocked, should be coming with a conventional 8-pin connector, a single 8-pin connector, because if you're 200 watts, you got your 8-pin connector, you draw some through the PCIe power slot on the motherboard, and away you go. So that's his info there. He's also mentioning regarding pricing that retailers have not yet been given a firm MSRP for the upcoming GeForce RTX 4070, only a sort of from range where the cards should be expected. Now, he's saying retailers have not been given that, so people selling these in stores, versus I think where the $750 number came from was it was from a Moore's Law is Dead video saying he had sources, I think, from the board partners. So anyway, whatever. We'll see what ends up being the case on that pricing. I hope it's not terrible, but I'm not getting my hopes set too high. Now, how about this? The latest Windows 11 22H2 patch Tuesday, Moment 2, may be slowing down SSDs and boot times. So if you felt like the latest Windows 11 patch slowed down your PC, you might want to run a test on how fast your SSD is going, because it's being reported that some people are seeing, if you test in like Crystal Disk Mark, for example, for your speeds, before and after that update, and then they actually did try rolling back the update to see if it went back to the better speeds, that yes, it was indeed going slower after the update. Now, this is interesting because, again, this is after the update, and this is after uninstalling the update. You can notice these, especially look at those write speeds, right? That's almost twice as fast without the update, or in other words, the update cut it in half. Oh, and check that out, 162.43 at 1,483.92, right? There's some big differences here. And again, confirm that rolling back the update fixed it. Now, when Windows 11 first launched, there had also been reports of bugs of it slowing down SSD speeds. And so this is apparently, going back to its roots. Now, speaking of SSDs and maybe wanting to check how fast they're running, there are reports now of fake Samsung 980 Pro SSDs. And this is interesting because the fakes actually perform pretty well, just not as fast as an actual 980 Pro. So you might buy one of these fakes and never realize it, because you actually do get a pretty fast SSD. You're just not getting one as good as what you paid for. So this report I'm seeing at Tom's Hardware, apparently they're seeing a report from a Chinese user from Baidu Tieba. Anyway, forums recently encountered an imitation posing as the actual 980 Pro. The phony drive had everything that suggested that it was legit. The Samsung 980 Pro 2TB sticker, and even the firmware, which later turned out to be fake. The forgery was so good that the mysterious drive even managed to fool the Samsung Magician software. That's Samsung's software that comes with their SSDs, where you can monitor their health and all sorts of stats and control them. Anyway, once the sticker was removed, the drive had all the signs of a counterfeit SSD. So how can you tell you have a counterfeit? Well, one option would be to remove the sticker and actually look at the hardware that's on it. This used the Maxio MAP1602A PCIe 4.0 SSD controller, which is the same one that's on the Acer Predator GM7. So again, it's not a terrible controller. It's just not as good as one that comes on the actual Samsung 980 Pro SSDs. Samsung produces and uses its own SSD controllers and NAND chips and would not be using one of these. Now, another way to tell would be if your drive is not performing as fast as it should. So I would recommend, you can look at the actual hardware itself, but you can run the Crystal Disk info, something like that, compare it to reviews of the 980 Pro and how fast it should actually be running. And then if it's running slower than it should be, it might just be Windows 11's fault. Windows 11's fault. But if it's not Windows 11's fault, it could be that you got a fake SSD. Now, this is just kind of a general thing, but while this one wasn't reported as purchased on Amazon, I'm a little bit scared of these showing up in Amazon because of the way Amazon does their does their shipping, right? They just throw all of the products into a bin together. So there could be one shady person like slipping in the forgeries, and then they get mixed up in the bin, and then you buy it shipped and sold from Amazon, but they have that one common supply, box that they just grab them out of. You might end up with the forgery. Anyway, that's just kind of a bigger issue with how Amazon does shipping. I'm just hoping those don't end up there. There's already some pretty sketchy stuff listed on Amazon, like fake 16 terabyte SSDs and things like that. Anyway, let's move on to ASUS and Noctua releasing their RTX 4080 Noctua edition, which has a number of upgrades to the cooling. It is also huge. It is also whisper quiet, which is the only thing I can really say would recommend it, because the price is apparently $1,650, which, if you're noticing, that is higher than the RTX 4090 MSRP, and you can actually buy RTX 4090s around their MSRP now. You know, it would have to be a very specific person to, in my opinion, think that buying a 4080 with a Noctua cooler would make more sense than just buying a 4090. And if you're so concerned about the noise levels, honestly, most 4090s are actually pretty quiet because of the massive coolers on them. But you can also draw back the power, you know, pretty significantly and still keep like 90% of the performance. And then they barely even kick on the fans, guys. They use a lot of energy, but they, you know, and whatever, they have these massive coolers. So this is the tech power-up review, which I'll link in the description if you want to read more details. But they're mentioning it's extremely expensive, not that big of a factory OC, and a very large card. But it is unbelievably quiet, nearly inaudible at full load. So at least there's that. So anyway, I think these are cool. I just don't think charging more than a 4090 makes sense. I think you should at least keep it a little under the price of a 4090, in my opinion. Anyway, in other cooler design news, MacSun is showing off a purple graffiti style cooler design for their 4070 Ti. This is called the iCraft model, so you could be on the lookout for that. And then in other news, Buildzoid has put out a hour-long rant video. I hate the Intel 13th Gen memory controller. Now, I cannot summarize the entire video, but so definitely feel free to watch the whole thing. However, I actually found this through the R Hardware subreddit, and there was actually a very good summary of the video posted here, and he also mentions he would recommend watching the full video. But a big part of what this was about was that so recently DDR5 8000 memory chips came out. So a lot of people were thinking, you know, okay, that'll be, you know, further, you know, get as much performance as I can out of my Intel 13900K. Well, Buildzoid cannot get DDR5 8000 stable at all. He apparently tried tons of different CPUs and motherboards and RAM kits, as well as cleaning the CPUs, memory kits, and motherboards. And all of them eventually throw errors. And he says that people who say that theirs is running stably, he says they're probably just not fully checking for stability. Because he says all of them will eventually throw errors after several hours or days of stress testing. So sometimes it could take days of stress testing, but they would eventually get those memory errors. And what he's frustrated about is not just that he can't get them stable, but how difficult it is to thoroughly stability check them. And that, by the way, the hours or days of stress testing, that just further speaks to Buildzoid's actually hardcore overclocking. I'm not super into overclocking myself. I prefer just stability, out-of-the-box settings, reviewing things at out-of-the-box settings. But I'm still interested in overclocking, just seeing what people like Buildzoid are able to do. Anyway, I do recommend taking a look at this video. He has a whole bunch more information in the video. Definitely recommending that most people don't go beyond 6800 or 7200 for max stability if you just want it to plug and play XMP stable. A lot of other stuff in the video, like I said, links will be in the description. Now, speaking of memory and motherboards and stability, ASUS released early AMD X670 B650 BIOS updates with 24/48 GB DDR5 memory support. I've reported in some other videos that there are these 24 and 48 gigabyte DDR5 memory modules hitting the market, but you do need your motherboard to be able to support them. ASUS has released beta BIOS that does support some of these, but again, you should not get a beta BIOS unless you really need it. So I would say the vast majority of people should just wait, but if you're really interested in trying these things out, It looks like these are, the beta BIOS is available. But again, speaking of stability, I would recommend waiting until things are officially tested and launched, unless you really need them right away. Now, speaking of waiting for things, how about AMD's Ryzen Mobile 7040HS Phoenix laptops delayed until April? We had originally expected to get them in March, and a lot of people are very interested in the Phoenix APUs, seeing how these perform with RDNA 3 graphics and all that, but it looks like they are delayed. Now, AMD is allegedly testing a hybrid processor with Zen 4 and 4C cores. This would be their first Big.Little design. So we've already seen something that's not really a Big.Little design, but we've at least seen with like the 7950X3D, AMD giving one CCD that's different than the other CCD, where we have one with the 3D V-cache but lower clock speeds and one with higher clock speeds without the 3D V-cache. But it looks like they're actually testing a Big.Little design where you have performance cores and efficiency cores, basically, more similar to what Intel is doing. Now, this is an unannounced AMD processor identified as Family 25 Model 120 Stepping 0 recently showed up in the Milky Way at Home database. The CPU can process 12 threads simultaneously, and the CPU expert InstlatX64 believes that this is AMD's codename Phoenix 2 processor. Phoenix 2, by the way, not having a lot to do with the Phoenix laptop chips. They're not the same thing. Anyway, packing 2 high-performance Zen 4 cores and 4 energy-efficient Zen 4 cores. Anyway, I don't want to make too big of a deal out of this. Again, link in the description if you want more info, but interesting to see that out there in the wild. Now, if you're interested in Waterblocks for your GPU, and EK is a very popular water block manufacturer, unfortunately, prices look like they are going to increase. They're saying due to increased, costs for them, they are going to have to pass on some of those cost increases to customers. The prices will increase by 8% on average, so not everything by 8%, but 8% on average, applying to any selected product or product line our company currently offers. The changes will occur on March 31st, 2023, so orders placed before March 31st, 2023 would not be affected by the pricing adjustment. Now, speaking of pricing adjustments, the Steam Deck recently went on sale during Steam's spring sale, which is really good news, but what if you bought one right before they went on sale? Well, it looks like people have been successful at getting Valve to give them at least Steam Wallet credit for the difference. So and it looks like the limit on time frame that they seem to be supporting is about a week before this sale occurred. So if you bought a Steam Deck within about a week of the Steam spring sale reducing the price, it would be worth reaching out to Valve to see if you can get Steam Wallet credit for the difference. AMD losing PC market space to Intel, analyst says. Intel 12th and 13th gen CPUs more competitive than Ryzen. So AMD had gained a lot of market share in the desktop PC CPU space with their Ryzen CPUs, especially for a few years where Intel had kind of stagnated. We're talking like the 10 and 11 series especially. With the 12th and 13th gen, Intel has been very competitive again, and it looks like AMD may be losing back some of that market share. However, if you look at the server space, AMD is still crushing it. So there is that. A lot of us are focused on our desktop PCs, but remember these companies, desktop consumer PCs is one aspect of their business, but there's also like the enterprise server space, all of that. A few last real quick things. The Witcher Project Sirius, which was from Molasses Flood developer, is rebooted. So apparently CD Projekt Red is listing a huge loss for this project, indicating that it's being under a new framework. In other words, they might be totally redesigning that whole project. So I just wanted to throw that out there. This is not the same thing as the new Witcher saga being built on Unreal Engine 5. They had a different project in development with Molasses Flood, but apparently they are reevaluating the scope and commercial potential of the original concept for Project Sirius, which is the code name for that, and they're formulating a new framework for that project. Also, in the AI space, we're seeing text-to-video AI being shown off here. Apparently, this example here was generated by a text input prompt that was a shot following a hiker through jungle brush. So, interesting stuff. We're already seeing, well, this stuff is cool. I'm mostly just concerned if it just makes GPUs more expensive as AI takes off using them. Anyway, so Acer is more known for PC accessories and like laptops and all that kind of stuff. But apparently they're making an e-bike with a portable battery that could charge your phone or maybe your laptop. So there's that. No word on how many, although it's AI powered, by the way. So apparently it will like learn your routines. And guys, I think there's interesting uses of AI. And then there's this. However, no word on how many SSDs you could smuggle in that e-bike because China Customs sees electronic scooter with 84 SSDs taped inside. So there is that. So due to the form factor of SSDs, you can fit a lot of them in a little scooter. Anyway, I hope all of you have an excellent day.